Britney Spears is threatening to sue her sister Jamie. This is Josh Sanford, America's attorney, and we're here with attorney Tom to figure out, does she have a case? You'll tell us if you're on Team Jamie or if you're on Team Britney.
Yeah, well, you're just gonna have to stick around to find out. Britney Spears is threatening to sue her sister because her sister is coming out with a tell-all book about Britney's life in the conservatorship.
Okay, and she sent her a cease and desist letter. What is that?
It's basically a letter saying, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to sue you.
Do you write cease and desist letters?
I have before, and I've received cease and desist letters before.
Does anyone ever obey a cease and desist letter?
Generally, no.
Okay, I'm anti-cease and desist letter. My thing is, if you think you have to write a letter to someone to get them to stop doing something, they're not going to stop doing it.
Yeah, and what a lot of people, I think, don't know is that a cease and desist letter is just a letter. Yeah, it's coming from a lawyer, and it might have some fancy law firm's letterhead on it, but it's not an actual legal document. It's got no weight behind it. So there's
nothing stopping
Jamie from just tearing up that letter and continuing on with whatever she's doing.
Do we know who made the fact that the letter was sent public? Does this come from Britney or from Jamie?
I think it came from Britney. I think Britney's lawyer publicized the letter.
Obviously, if Britney or Jamie had ever called you for legal advice, you couldn't tell us if that had happened, right?
Could I tell you?
Well, I can say that they haven't. I don't even need to get into that legal rabbit hole. I've never spoken to Britney or Jamie Spears in my life. You know, and I can't get it. That goes back to why the situation is so unique. If a tell-all book was written, I can only think of maybe a handful of people who that might actually benefit. You know, I don't think anybody in the world is going to believe Jamie Spears after her lack of credibility due to the whole conservatorship and the whole scandal behind that. So she could write a book saying whatever the she wants.
And she's going to say that she loves her sister, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's going to believe that. And I think, if anything, it's just going to give Britney more press, more publicity, where she can then monetize that on her future business opportunities.
Well, you touched on this earlier. A negative book could affect Britney's brand, right?
Or I say, yeah, maybe in a positive way.
Yeah, well, what is Britney's brand?
Her brand has been very much associated with her struggles personally, her personal struggles.
I guess the pro-Britney version of that story is that her sister and her father, if I'm right, are the ones who have kind of made her brand for her.
The only thing that I know about Britney Spears, I've heard about her in the most recent years, has been her conservatorship. I haven't. Yeah, I couldn't tell you when the last time she put out a record is. I couldn't tell you that, but I could tell you that, I know her family pretty much conspired against her to keep her in this conservatorship, or at least that's the way the media is portraying it. Everybody in America is pretty much on Team Britney, so I think it really can't hurt her.
That's a fair point. I like kind of the old school, like, I'm going to write a tell-all book, like, she's 65 or 68 years old, or it's 1990 and the internet doesn't exist.
Right.
Like, why doesn't she just record a video and post it on YouTube? Or why doesn't she have a blog where she writes this? Like, it's a very antiquated way of ventilating your emotional frustrations or the things that you did wrong. Or, if I may borrow a phrase from someone, the things I should have said in a situation that's like very, very current, which is siblings having a public feud.
Right. The first issue is whether or not the statements are actually defamatory to begin with.
So what if everything that she says is true, but it's very bad?
Or isn't an opinion? When does, because I think the crux of what Britney feels is defamatory is Jamie saying things like she was unstable, she was, a threat to herself or to other people. She was very. I think it's a kind of a back-ended way of justifying her treatment under this very harsh conservatorship. She's trying to save face because the public is so, like, hey, what did you do to her these past 10 years or 13 years she was in this conservatorship?
And if this played out in the courtroom, surely Jamie's team would say, look, it's not false to say that she was unstable. you have a judge here who found that she was, right? And kept the conservatorship going on despite lots and lots of public scrutiny.
Right. And because Britney Spears is a public figure, you're going to need to prove actual malice in the defamation case.
It seems like one of the things that I see happening as media becomes a bigger and bigger part of our lives is that there are ways in which the law hasn't really kept up. There are a lot of public figures now.
Right.
As a percentage of the population, there's a lot of famous people.
Absolutely.
Is the dad, is he a public figure?
I think for the purposes of this case, yes. With that said, there are some individuals who are just so famous, no matter what they do, is going to be in the public eye. And I think Britney Spears absolutely transcends that. Jamie Lynn Spears probably transcends that, especially with respect to a case involving her family situation. And like somebody like their father might not be a public figure, but for a situation involving this controversial case. Let's just say that they can even prove it's defamatory. Let's just say that it's a defamatory statement. What are the damages? More so than that, Britney's brand is untouchable. I mean, she has a very loyal fan base who is stuck with her through the thick and the thin. You know, I don't think this silly book is going to really cause any harm. In fact, it might do the opposite. It might just give her even more publicity, where she's going to get even more support.
Yeah, I mean, part of her brand is that she's the underdog, right? She keeps fighting against these.
She was in an abusive conservatorship, right? I mean, it's hard not to know about it. So then, you know, you worry about, can you find 12 people who haven't really made up their mind one way or the other? And, you know, I think that might be pretty tough.
Would this trial have to take place in California? Do you know?
Almost certainly. So basically, to recap this whole thing, issue 1 is the book defamation. And we don't know the answer to that. We don't know. Britney's a public figure. It's going to have to prove that Jamie acted with actual malice to prove defamation. A lot of it's gray area stuff, but I don't even think we really need to get too into the weeds about this particular issue, because even if it is defamation, you're going to have to prove damages. And I think that is the big driver of this case, or I should say the deterrent of this case, because I don't think that there are really going to be damages. In fact, I might argue that it's the opposite. This is just more publicity that Britney can capitalize on for her future opportunities, and you mix that with the lack of credibility of Jamie Lynn Spears, or at least how I perceive it, the lack of credibility. I don't think anybody's going to believe a word she says. So it might just not be worth Britney's time to even bring a lawsuit.
Yeah, and it may be that Jamie wants to be the first one in the public's eye because she knows that Britney's still capable of putting out an album, and maybe the album is about all of this. Like maybe she has an album about the defamation trial, which would be a first of its kind, I think.
Right.
Attorney Tom, we've covered an awful lot today. It's been great. You've given us a lot of insight about defamation and other aspects of this hypothetical case between the Spears sisters. But what everyone wants to know is, are you on Team Britney or are you on Team Jamie?
I think objectively, or maybe subjectively, I'm on Team Britney. I think she got screwed over. Now, do I think she should pursue a lawsuit? I don't think she would win if she would pursue it. So the only question I would ask Britney, if she were my client, is, are you okay with spending all this money to pursue this lawsuit that you very well know you might lose, but in exchange you might get your side of the story out there more effectively?
If you followed this story, get down in the comments and tell us who you think should win the battle between Britney and Jamie.
And subscribe to Josh's channel.
His name is Attorney Tom. He has to be a lawyer.
Or I'm going to jail for fraud.